morning sun, how are you? Skies above. Gee, it's great to be alive and love.
And hello, this is an impromptu episode talking about a Docker issue that I just encountered. And I thought I would document that because I'm guessing I'm not the only person to run into this problem. And I was pretty lost in terms of how I resolved it. So just thought I'd share and record this and walk through the process of what happened. So if you saw my last video, I thought I had successfully figured out how to create a new Docker transparent network so that I could assign my Docker containers to my main Office network subnet. Great, so I have a 192.168 address, assigned it to that subnet, used a static IP, and assigned that to my BC container. It worked great. I tested it. I'm able to connect from my desktop, my laptop. Everything looked great. Well, then Ricardo replied to me on Twitter. He noticed a prior tweet that I had sent where I was playing with this, and he reminded me of an issue that I did see. There was a GitHub issue related to Nav Container Helper where it's like if you restart the host, Docker on Windows loses the network settings. And I did see that. Several people chimed in and confirmed they were having that issue, but I thought it was a while ago, and I didn't know if it was just Docker Desktop or if it also applied to Docker Enterprise, and I hadn't encountered the issue. So I thought, great, let me reboot my machine, the host machine, and see what happens. Well, here is what happened. I broke Docker, and I was kind of surprised. And Docker is not very helpful when it won't start up. Let me just share that with you. And it was very broke. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. So here is my Docker server, and after reboot, of course the phone rings. After reboot, I went in here and said Docker PS. Let me take a look at things. And I got this message. This is the typical error that you'll get if the Docker service is not running. And so this is pipe Docker engine, system cannot find the file specified, default configuration, client must be run and elevated. This error may also indicate that the Docker daemon is not running. I've seen this before lots of times for various reasons, so I thought, okay, great. Maybe the service hasn't started yet. Went to Windows Services. Docker engine, not running. Startup type, automatic. That's weird. So I right-clicked, start, and you get this. Could not start. The process terminated unexpectedly. No other information. Like, what does this mean? Okay, so what's next? Let's go to Event Viewer, and we'll go into the Windows Logs folder. And application, there is removing stale sandbox, and there's this container start information, but no errors. If I go into System, though, I do have one error. The Docker engine service terminated unexpectedly. It has done this 5 times, and that is all you get in Windows Event Viewer. Nothing helpful. So I thought, okay, that doesn't help me. Now, I wouldn't have known where to go next, but it just happens that while browsing through the files on my hard drive from the prior video where I was showing windir-stat and which files are being used, I stumbled across I have Docker set up to save files, use files on my D drive. So I have a D Docker directory. While I was looking through that, I noticed, there's a panic.log file. And I don't work with Unix much, but if you're not familiar with it, panic is a term that is used, I think, more on the Unix side or older system side. And I think the reference is kernel panic, and it's basically like an error, a crash, a hard crash that often can't be recovered. So I opened this log and I see invalid memory address or nil pointer reference, not a null pointer reference, a nil pointer reference. So, okay, I kind of understand that concept. There's nothing I can do about it. So there's some debug logging, means nothing to me. Like this is just like a exception dump, doesn't really help me much. Okay, so then I was looking around, like, how do you troubleshoot this? And the one thing I saw is, well, you type dockerd to start the Docker daemon, and you use debug mode -D, it seems. So when I do that, okay, I get some debug information, loaded container 682FE, restoring container, okay, restoring existing overlay networks, because the network was the one thing I had changed. I've rebooted this machine several times. I've deleted containers, deleted images, recreated them, never had an issue. It's the first time I've had an issue. So I'm assuming it was related to the additional transparent network that I added. And then get networks, network response, and this is like configuration information. I can't tell if my transparent network is in here, but it says transparent network restored, endpoint restored to network, network restored, okay, removing stale sandbox, revoking external connectivity on endpoint bcdev1, that is my container name, and debug message, get endpoints for whatever this GUID means, some endpoint, and then I get an invalid memory address. Whatever this means, it doesn't really matter. I can't do anything about it to fix it, the underlying error. So my only thought was, okay, well, presuming that it is the network change that I made, how do I undo that and like just turn off or disable or remove that transparent network that I added? No idea how to do that. So I thought, well, I'm assuming that it's not using a registry. I'm assuming that it's got a config file somewhere. And so I poked around and I saw, okay, well, here's a network folder. Well, it has files in there. And it has this file, ignore these A and Z's as they're just my copies, has this file called local-kv. And if I open that, it is some type of binary file. But if I search for 192.16, there we go. So I see I have a gateway 192.168.25.1. There is my transparent network 25.0/24. And let's see if I have net1 in here. Yep. So there's the name net1. Now, I wouldn't bother attempting to modify this file, given the .db file name, given all this. No, it looks like it's in some quasi-binary format, so no point in me trying to rename it. So I thought, okay, if I can't start Docker, how do I tell Docker that I want to remove a network? How do I tell Docker I want to just delete my container? I didn't know how to do any of that. I did see the one reference to a container ID. It said like removing stale sandbox 682F. So I tried removing this from the containers folder, so there would be nothing there. That didn't help. So I thought, okay, well, let's go to network and let's just rename this. And so I did this, and so, okay, there's no local KV network configuration database, so let's see what happens. I went in here, did the same thing, dockerd-d, and it seemed to be doing stuff. So I see that there were errors. So if we go up here, loads the network information, does request, network response, okay, launching DNS server. So it looks like it's getting past that network request endpoint or network request step. Now it's trying to do more stuff, and then let's see where that error was. It's assigning that NAT endpoint or NAT network, and it's trying to assign addresses, requesting address in the 25.0. So, and there's my 181 IP address, the static IP address that I'd assigned. So it looks like is reading somewhere in that container config DB, it is reading the configuration saying, oh, this container bcdev1 is assigned to network net1. This is the IP address. Let me load that up. And so it's trying to make that happen. And I saw some errors in here during that load. Unable load. Oh, okay. So that's licensing. No. Registering. Huh. Okay. So I just saw some errors scroll by, but it kind of looks like it's working, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Control-C to just shut down. And now I'm going to go over to Docker Engine Service. I'm going to select Start. And it starts up. No error. It says it's running. So this is as far as I got before I just turned on the cameras and started doing things. So let's do Docker PS. Okay, so my container did not start successfully. And it says status exited. Let's just see what happens. Docker start dev, bcdev1. Failed to start container bcdev1. Process cannot access the file because it is being used by another process. So some file lock. So if I do docker ps-a and I do remove bc container bcdev1, let's see if this works. Removing container, removing hosts, and removing extensions. Okay. And we're clear. I still have my images. So now I've renamed the network local-kv.db file. So if I do, let me just pull up my, I can't remember the commands yet. Okay, docker network ls is the command. So let's just do that. So docker network ls, notice that my transparent network doesn't have a name because I've removed that DB file. It says driver transparent. It knows there was something there. So there must be some master config that is referencing that. But since I've deleted the DB file for the driver settings, it doesn't know what it is. So I'm going to do docker network rm. And I'm just going to copy and paste this whole thing. And it's taking a while. Let's see if it's hanging my machine. Okay, it is. So I've lost connection to my RDP temporarily. There we go. Okay, so now let's do docker network ls. Cool. We now have a NAT and the none. No more transparent network. And so now let's see if I can create a container. And that's my manual one. And this will be BC, let me just call it BCDev2 just in case there's some bad remnants here. Okay, this should only take a couple minutes. So everything was working fine until I rebooted my server, and that triggered this. So I'm going to create a new container, confirm it works with the NAT network. I will recreate a transparent, try this process again, do a reboot, see if this is repeatable. I don't think I'm doing anything special or wrong or elaborate here. So yeah, I don't know how to describe this. Is this a bug? Is this some bizarre configuration issue? We'll see. Okay, so that container is underway. Okay, so bcdev2 exists. It is up. And let's do the docker inspect, get the IP address. Oh, oops, bcdev2. Okay, so it has a NAT address. And let's just, okay, the icons aren't created yet, but we should, mounting database. Okay, so it's going to take a couple more seconds. So this kind of like lucky recovery here to rename this in order to get rid of, this appears to be the problem. This network file is doing something when it loads the transparent network configuration that is causing a memory error with Docker. So I don't know where the main Docker configuration is. So I guess I need to find that. I do see on C drive under program files Docker where I have it installed. It's just, that's really basic. Licenses, DLLs. So I'm not sure where that config is that allows it to know that there is a transparent network configured. Okay, still working on the database. Volumes. Windows filter. Okay. Not sure. Builder. Yeah, not much in here. Okay, so there's my bcdev2 web client. So make sure my container works. Looks like it's working okay. So now, tempting fate. Let's try this all over again. So I'm going to create a transparent network 192.168.25.0/24, and I think there's something missing here. I think it needs to be called, oh, okay, it's a line wrap. Okay. Okay, so there's my net1 network. And it's going to disconnect my RDP session. It's messing with the local network driver. So there is my network ID. And next up, we have Let's just verify that looks good. Okay. Okay, looking good. And then what we're going to do is connect the my new BC2 container to that net1 network. Great. And now if we use inspect on the container, yep, we have our net address and we have our net1 address. That looks good. So I'm just going to do a quick test. Going to paste this in. So we're going to hit the IP address directly. That works. Okay, so that looks good. Looks like this network is working. So now, just out of curiosity, I'm going to stop the container before I reboot. I did not do this last time. It shouldn't matter. Docker hopefully isn't that fragile, but let's see. So there's my container, docker stop bcdev2. Okay, so now Docker container is stopped, exited. Okay, so now let's close all this and let's reboot and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to do a restart. And yep. Okay, and this machine should be pretty speedy. Still coming back up. There we go. Okay, so moment of truth. Let's try Docker PS, Docker PSA. Okay, so good. We rebooted. Docker did restart, interestingly. Let's just see if we have any errors. I'm assuming we didn't, because if Docker would have had an error, it wouldn't have restarted. Okay, looks like we're good, no errors. Now let's do a Docker network ls, which this is getting back to the point of the tweet that I received. Okay, so now this is just the first step. Yes, my net1 transparent network does exist, but that doesn't mean that the IP address information for my container has been retained. So let's do a docker start bcdev2. Looks like it works. Fascinating. So only thing this appears to be working fine. So how did it break last time? Only thing I can think of, well, couple things. Last time I had made several changes to the network before rebooting. I'd added networks, removed networks, attached them, detached them from the container, connected, disconnected, I guess. Done a whole bunch of changes, trying different things, different IP addresses. Maybe I somehow corrupted that network DB config file used by Docker. I shouldn't be able to do that. I know I'm dangerous on the keyboard with Docker, but that sounds like a bug. Something in the network config got broken. It's kind of disconcerting. If you're in a production environment, that would kind of be a bad day. So this appears to work. So now let's do my docker inspect command, which I'll never memorize. And this is bcdev2. There we go. We've still got both IP addresses. After a reboot, but I stopped the container before I rebooted. I don't know if that matters. Now let me open let's just start with the bcdev2 container name. Looks like that is opening. And then bc, okay, and IP address. So it's working on both IP addresses. Everything is cool. So let me just log in, get it started, or make sure it's running and responsive. Looks good. Okay, now this time I'm going to reboot without stopping the Docker container. Let's see, 1, if Docker comes back up, and then 2, if the net1 setup is retained and the static IP address is retained. And with the caveat, this is Docker Enterprise, Docker Engine Enterprise on Server 2019. This is not Docker Desktop. There may be a difference there. Okay, so let me close this. We're good there. And let's do one more restart. And this is without stopping the container. Okay. Wait a few seconds here. We go to puppy dog view. That's what I did today. I made a dog cry. Okay. And here we go. Nope. Okay, so let's try this now. Docker PS. Fascinating. Okay. Docker inspect. 2 IP addresses. So Docker came back up. So it wasn't necessarily fundamentally me creating a transparent network, me connecting that network to my bcdev container. It just appears that I corrupted the, sorry, one moment. I think I have someone knocking on my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Okay. So it wasn't fundamentally me creating a transparent container, wasn't me connecting that container, connecting that network to the container. The only thing I'm guessing is that me messing with networks repeatedly, something happened that corrupted that network configuration.db file in my Docker network files directory. This local-kv, this one right here is the bad one. And there's no way I'm going to figure out what that is. So whatever. So that's good. Okay. So that was the impromptu lesson on Docker networking and troubleshooting the error restarting due to a apparently corrupted config file. This will probably be applicable to all of 2 people on the planet if you have the exact same scenario, which hopefully you don't. But it tells me a couple things. I'm wondering, maybe I should back up these files. Because let's say I had 10 containers and I can't boot up. Would it be a major hassle to have to reconfigure this? Looks like I was able to recover. Once I renamed that network DB, I was able to delete, or still was able to remove the network and then add it back. But I deleted my container because it had some bad config. So it's messy cleanup if you have a bunch of containers. So I'm wondering, does it make sense to occasionally back up these files in the file system? Would that have been a sufficient way to recover? I don't know. But anyway, I hope you found that interesting, entertaining, and have a good evening. Talk to you later.
Good.